A month had passed since I first stumbled upon that strange ad in the Mandurah Times. For the first 2 Wednesdays, I obsessively flipped through the fresh issues, hiding them from my girlfriend like forbidden fruit. But the newspaper remained silent. No hint, no whisper of the mystery that had once burst into my life. Life flowed mundanely, like a river in the dry season. Slow, predictable. Until yesterday. I had to go to Pinjarra for work, to pick out gravel for the office pathways. A small company on the outskirts, 3 trucks, an open-air storage yard. In the office, which looked more like a construction trailer, I was greeted by Dan, a red-haired guy with hands covered in tiny scratches and traces of cement.
Gravel, no problem. What size?
He smiled, revealing straight white teeth. We quickly settled the delivery. I was about to leave when Dan unexpectedly said,
I can bring it today, right now.
I glanced around the empty yard. No loaders, no forklifts in sight. Seriously, by yourself? Dan just smiled mysteriously.
I have my methods.
Imagine my surprise when, returning after lunch, I saw the truck with my order already unloading at the office. My dad was animatedly discussing something with Dan. And when I got closer, I noticed the same red card with white letters on the inside of the windshield. Alter 1.
Everything all right?
My dad asked as the truck puffing diesel fumes drove away. I nodded, but only one question spun in my head. How did he do it alone? For 2 hours I was in a strange, feverish state, as if ants were crawling under my skin, making it impossible to focus. I needed to talk to Dan, in person. I dialed his company's number, and luckily he answered himself. His voice was friendly, casual. Trying not to sound suspicious, I suggested meeting up, said there was something to discuss, but not over the phone.
Sure.
Dan replied without the slightest surprise, as if he'd been expecting the call.
Tonight, we can meet at a bar, have a beer.
Turns out he lived in Mandurah too. The Silver Sands. A cozy tavern in the old district, where lantern light reflects off dark windows and the smell of fried seafood mixes with the bitter aroma of hops. We sat in a corner of the veranda, ordered draft beer, cold with thick foam, and a light snack. I didn't beat around the bush. Where'd you get the altar card? I asked directly, staring into his eyes. Dan smiled, no discomfort, no wariness, just a smile as if he'd finally heard the question he'd been waiting for.
You saw the ad, huh?
He said quietly, taking a sip of beer.
In the Mandurah Times.
I felt my heart pound hard in my chest. So you're also?
I thought I was losing my mind. Scoured the whole internet, not a single trace.
He nervously ran his fingers over the condensation on his glass, leaving wet trails.
For 3 months, every Wednesday, I've been going to Mandurah Forum, but there's only coals. It's like Alter never existed.
Wait, I saw that ad on March 19th. I remember the date. It's my dad's birthday. You met him today, I said.
Wow, I was there at Christmas. Since then, total silence.
Dan continued.
But since then, strange things started happening in my life.
Dan squinted slyly.
You noticed how fast I handled the delivery, right? See, when I got this card from that annoying rabbit at the supermarket, I just tossed it onto my dashboard, and suddenly not a single red light, not a single traffic jam.
Dan laughed.
I ran an experiment, left the card at home, spent the whole day stuck in traffic like a normal person.
His laughter turned nervous.
Of course, I put it back. Then I placed the card in the truck bed, put a rock on top. All right, show me what you've got, I thought, and walked back to the office.
His fingers mimicked an explosion.
5 minutes and the truck was loaded.
My eyes must have bugged out.
I see you don't believe me.
Dan smirked.
Fine, what about your card? Does it do anything for you?
I shrugged. Nothing. I tossed it somewhere and never took it out again. By the way, I added, my card says Alter 2 and yours says Alter 1. What do you think that means?
Very interesting,
Dan said slowly.
Maybe it's different levels.
He looked up at me, a curious glint in his eyes.
But levels of what? Maybe. They're magical properties.
He laughed again.
You have to test what your card can do.
Both of us felt lighter after the meeting. Now it was clear neither of us was crazy. We parted ways, promising to stay in touch, like acquaintances bound by a strange secret. The way home felt shorter than usual, thoughts tangled as if the wind was pushing them forward. Entering the house, I headed straight to the study. The desk with papers stood untouched. That's where I'd thrown the card, buried under a pile of unsorted bills and receipts. I picked it up. Just a piece of plastic, cold to the touch. turned it over, and froze. Samuel Clifton White. The white letters stood out sharply against the red background. How had I not noticed before? I definitely hadn't given my full name to that rabbit at the supermarket. My last name, especially. Just Sam, I muttered aloud, as if testing my own memory. So where did they get it? And more importantly, when did they have time to make the card? Outside, somewhere far away, cockatoos shrieked, sharp, alarming. Their cries sounded almost like laughter. A stack of unopened mail loomed on the desk. Those envelopes with transparent windows that pile up in the corner for months. I grabbed them, trying to distract myself. The first letter was from our realtor. The paper smelled of printer's ink as I unfolded it. This year the rent will remain unchanged. I reread the line twice. That hadn't happened in all 3 years we'd rented this house. In Mandurah, rent prices rose like yeast in warm beer, inexorably and predictably. This year, when everyone was talking about housing price spikes, when newspapers were plastered with headlines about the rental crisis, "Jessie's gonna love this," I mumbled, picturing her delight. The next envelope was from the energy company. Inside, a notice about a recalculation and a refund check. My phone beeped. A text, "Energy supplement, $400 credit to your energy account." I laughed out loud. "Well, would you look at that?" My gaze fell on the card. "Is this you?" I whispered. The question hung in the air, stupid and absurd. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the sweet taste of unexpected luck. The next morning, I placed the card on the dashboard of my old Holden. The drive to the city centre turned into a strange dance. Traffic lights turned green the moment I approached. On Mandurah Terrace, where a line of cars usually formed by this hour, space cleared before me. Once I slammed the brakes at a red light, but it instantly switched to green, as if apologizing for the mistake. It was Saturday, so Mandurah was packed. People from all over, even Perth. Our resort town was overflowing, cafes jammed, tour boats buzzing along the river, beaches swarming with tourists. "All right, transportation's figured out," I muttered, parking near the mall. "But what else can you do?" I have a cat, a regular ginger troublemaker who clearly believes he's of imperial blood and demands only a specific brand of fishy canned food, sold exclusively at Coles. That's where I headed, taking the altar card with me. I tossed cat food, chocolate, a big pack of Coke and a few household items into the cart. At the self-checkout, the system asked, "Do you have a flyby card?" I tapped the Alta 2 Elts card against the terminal. The machine beeped. The screen displayed $247 instead of $82. I blinked. Every item showed a discount percentage. My bank card confirmed the payment. The receipt printed with that absurd total. I froze, feeling like a thief. Discounts like that didn't exist. A staff member noticed my confusion.
"Need help?"
she asked. "Yeah, there's some mistake. These discounts are insane." She glanced at the receipt.
It's correct. Sometimes we have promotions like this. Even management's baffled by the generosity. Everything's been double-checked. No mistake. It's like a lottery. You got lucky.
She smiled sweetly and wished me a nice day. I left the store in mild shock. I needed to call Dan, ask if he'd tried his card in stores, and tell him we weren't the only ones with these miracle cards. I called Dan and explained the situation. He said he'd tried it, but no luck. Apparently, my card was indeed a higher level with more advanced functions, which raised the question. Based on the selection on the Rabbit's tablet, there should be 6 cards, and each next level meant new possibilities. Since I started carrying the card with me, I'd noticed all my paperwork and digital affairs were suddenly going smoothly. Whatever the card touched became effortlessly solvable. The logic of the altar cards became clear. Dan's altar one affected physical processes, speeding them up, loading traffic. Mine, altar 2, influenced financial bureaucratic aspects, rent, discounts, plus transportation speed, likely overlapping some altar 1-ton properties. On Wednesday, I unfolded the fresh issue of the Mandurah Times. The habit had already seeped into my fingers. Now I mechanically checked every color illustration, spreading them apart with cautious persistence. No black squares with zoom zoom, but I kept searching. Then suddenly on page 17 in an unremarkable restaurant ad, the photo of ribs and wings shuddered under my fingertips. The image gently split apart. Grand opening of the Altavox cinema. Dear Mandurah residents, we proudly announce the rebranding of Reading Cinemas. Starting April 23, 2025, we're thrilled to offer a revolutionary full immersion system. Special pricing for the first month. Free popcorn and drinks on opening day. Exclusive premiere, Your Second Life. The film that will change everything. Screenings hourly from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. We await you. Your Altavox team. I immediately called Dan. Did you see today's issue? I asked without preamble.
Yeah, nothing unusual.
Turn to page 17, the wedge-tail ad. Tap the third photo, ribs and wings. A rustle of flipping pages echoed through the phone.
Just a normal ad. Doesn't work for me.
Dan finally said. I read him the text verbatim.
So only you can see it. What's the plan?
We check it out. Meet at the cinema at 7:45 p.m. for the 8 p.m. screening.
Deal. See you soon.
We met outside the cinema around 7:45 p.m. A red and white neon sign blazed above the entrance. Altavox. A crowd buzzed at the doors. Kids with balloons darted between adults' legs. On a makeshift stage, a white rabbit in a tie was declaiming into a microphone, flanked by red rabbits bouncing around him. Dan and I pushed through the festive throng. I spotted a familiar figure. Michael, a classmate of mine, now a photographer, was snapping pictures of the red rabbits handing out balloons. "Hey, Michael!" I shouted over the noise. He turned, his face first registering surprise, then breaking into a wide grin.
Samuel White, holy hell.
He fought his way toward us, wiping his lens.
I wasn't expecting to see you here.
I clapped him on the shoulder. "What brings you here? Freelance gig?" Michael hesitated, lowering his voice.
Well, this'll sound weird.
"You try it."
This morning, I was checking my ad in the Mandurah Times for Wedgetail, and
He glanced around.
one of the photos split open under my fingers. There was a hidden message about this cinema.
"Relax. You're not crazy. We're here for the same reason," I reassured him. "This is Dan. He's seen a similar ad before, but for a different place. Today, it only opened for me. Curiosity got the better of you?"
What else do you do when shit gets this bizarre?
Michael laughed, but tension flickered in his eyes.
Had to check if I was hallucinating. Now I see you two guess I'm not the only lunatic.
We stepped inside. The lobby smelled of buttery popcorn and synthetic new carpet scent. Red and white neon strands lined the walls, and instead of trailers, the screens displayed abstract animations, waves morphing from red to white. We bought 3 tickets for the 8 p.m. show.
Free popcorn and drinks for Altavox guests.
Screeched a familiar voice. A russet rabbit in a tiny vest and bow tie bounded over.
Your tickets include a special offer.
It waved a paw toward the concession stand, where other rabbits were filling soda cups.
Step right up.
We joined the line. Michael fiddled with his camera settings.
Hey, you!
Our guide suddenly tugged Michael's sleeve.
Photographer, yeah? We've got a surprise for you.
It produced the same tablet I'd seen at the supermarket. 6 red rectangles glowed on screen.
Pick your discount card. Trust me, it'll score you sweet perks. Not just for tickets.
The rabbit chirped. Michael wavered, but I told him to go for it. He tapped one of the rectangles. Alta 3 flashed on the screen. The rabbit handed him a plastic card branded with Alta and the number 3.
Congrats, level 3 for creative minds.
It winked. A whisper rippled through the air.
Level 3, level 3, level 3.
Michael flipped the card between his fingers.
Michael Connor Drake. How'd they get my name? And what does this do?
But the rabbit had already hopped away, yelling,
Next. Popcorn's not getting any fresher.
"Questions later," I said. "The show's starting soon." We entered the theater. The door clicked shut behind us with a hollow finality. I froze, inhaling air that was oddly sterile, as if someone had scrubbed away all smells, leaving only a faint metallic tang. No buttery popcorn scent, no hiss of soda cans, just silence.
What the hell?
Dan whispered, poking at what should have been a seat. Instead, matte white bioplastic cocoons stood before us, each glowing from within with a pulsing red light, like mechanical hearts. I ran a hand over one. The material was warm and slightly yielding, almost alive. Thick cables snaked from each cocoon to the floor, throbbing in sync with the inner light. The theater was packed. People sat motionless, encased in neuro-helmets studded with electrodes. Their eyes were closed, but their eyelids twitched rapidly, as if tracking some invisible action.
This isn't a cinema.
Michael removed his glasses, polishing them shakily on his shirt.
It is a next-gen VR lab.
Holograms lined the walls, projections of Mandurah but altered. I recognized the buildings, yet their shapes were geometrically perfected, as if drawn by a math-obsessed architect. Bridges curved in impossible fractals across the canals. We wordlessly found our assigned cocoons. The moment I sat, the gel-like seat molded around me, snugly gripping my hips and spine. The helmet's cold tendrils coiled around my head, electrodes latching onto my temples.
Jesus,
Dan jerked as his cocoon began shaping itself around him.
is this thing alive?
The lights died, the screen ignited. No trailers, no warnings. White letters appeared one by one, each accompanied by a mechanical click, like an invisible typewriter hammering the words into our minds. Your second life. I froze, feeling goosebumps crawl down my spine. On the screen appeared the familiar evening estuary, but the water glittered with an unnatural turquoise hue, reflecting hundreds of multicolored lights. Across transparent bridges, non-existent in our reality, streamlined transport capsules glided without making a sound. The Dolphin Quay boardwalk had transformed beyond recognition. Where fish markets and cafes once stood, now rose glass-domed laboratories, inside which biotech robots bustled about with surgical precision, transplanting corals. Along the streets bloomed neon gardens, hybrids of banksias and corals, their branches shimmering with mother-of-pearl iridescence, swaying to the rhythm of an invisible wind. Even the asphalt had been replaced by self-regenerating biopolymer that glistened like rain-dampened skin. Above the boardwalk floated holographic displays where the ancient Noongar language morphed into luminous patterns, dancing through the air. But the true shock lay ahead. The camera smoothly pivoted and we saw to ourselves. Our doppelgangers stood at the base of a new bridge, the very one whose construction in our reality wasn't slated to begin until 2026. They were clad in form-fitting white bodysuits, with glowing red accents, their heads adorned with next-generation neural interfaces.
These are clearly evolved versions of Perth-based Emotive's tech.
Michael remarked from my right. My double turned his head, and even through the darkened visor, I could feel his gaze. You're several technological cycles behind. His voice emanated from a smart necklace.
Devices like these are currently being tested at Mandurah's IoT Innovation Hub.
Michael commented again. I flinched. The sound wasn't coming from the screen, but directly from my helmet, vibrating through my skull. Michael jerked upright, but the seat gently yet firmly guided him back down.
This isn't a movie.
He said, jabbing a finger at the screen.
They can see us.
The screen flashed, the image changed, and the air in the theater was suddenly saturated with a complex, multi-layered fragrance, like the most exquisite perfume, where every note had been calibrated to perfection. The sweet freshness of ripe fruit intertwined with the earthy bitterness of fertile soil and barely perceptible floral harmonies. I recognized my father's garden immediately. The wrought iron archway, my gift for his 50th birthday, was now entwined with roses of unimaginable varieties. Their petals shimmered with mother-of-pearl iridescence, shifting color from delicate azure to deep amethyst, depending on the angle of light. Each blossom was a masterpiece of bioengineering, perfectly symmetrical, with a velvety texture exuding a subtle yet persistent fragrance that carried hints of wild honey and freshly cut vanilla pods. The trees astonished with their absolute perfection. Avocados with fruit smooth as polished jade, their oily skins emitting a faint nutty aroma. Mango alleys where each fruit hung at precisely calculated intervals, filling the air with tropical sweetness, underscored by a whisper of pine. Pomegranates with ruby seeds glowing within transparent capsules, emanating a refined scent reminiscent of the finest tea varieties. So this is where those fruits from the Alta supermarket come from, flashed through my mind as I involuntarily breathed in this divine bouquet. Between the trees hovered elegant drones with silver-white casings, leaving behind barely perceptible aromatic trails. They hummed softly as they meticulously pollinated blossoms with precise laser pulses. Transparent channels snaked along the ground, carrying a nutrient-rich substance that shimmered with a soft blue glow, like liquid sapphire. Its crisp, faintly mineral scent recalled the purity of mountain springs. At the heart of this technological paradise stood he, my father, but transformed. He appeared 35, his skin glowing with health, without a single wrinkle. His movements were precise and graceful. In his hands, he held an ultra-modern tablet projecting plant holograms. Project Paradise Phase 12, he announced, his voice remarkably clear and youthful, devoid of the familiar rasp I knew. Behind him appeared Marie, but not the nurse my father currently dated. This woman was younger, and I would have sworn it was my mother. She wore an impeccably tailored white lab suit with elegant red accents and the Alta logo. In her hands floated a hologram of a new hybrid, a flower whose petals morphed in real time. From it emanated a complex fragrance blending minty freshness, cinnamon warmth, and something utterly unfamiliar yet captivating. She handed my father an aerosol sprayer filled with turquoise liquid.
Strain Eden 12, stabilization successful, ready for transplantation,
She said, her voice resonating like a finely tuned instrument.
A single application will last the entire season.
The air grew sharp with a chemical sweet tang. My stomach clenched. My father, who for years had insisted not a drop of chemicals would ever touch his garden, now took that sprayer without hesitation. He had despised anything artificial, anything that disrupted nature's course. His garden used to smell different, rougher, sharper, but authentic. Yet this man stood smiling as he inhaled this artificially crafted harmony of scents. I watched, mesmerized, as he sprayed the solution onto an apple tree's trunk. The tree flared with a soft golden light, and the air filled with the fragrance of ripe fruit. Before my eyes, the fruit transformed, becoming even more flawless, their skins developing a perfect gloss, their forms achieving absolute symmetry. The screen went dark, leaving only a single phrase. Welcome to perfection. The helmet detached from my head with a soft click. I blinked, blinded by the abrupt transition from the garden's vivid imagery to the theater's dim gloom. Dan and Michael removed their helmets simultaneously. In their eyes, I saw my own shock reflected back at me. The auditorium remained silent. We realized the film had been shown for us alone. The other patrons still sat motionless in their cocoons, eyes closed, each immersed in their own private narratives. We rose almost in unison. The seats reluctantly released us with a moist sound of disconnecting contacts. As I scanned the room, I noticed all the attendees wore faded red and white outfits, just like the supermarket shoppers a month prior. From their seated postures, their proportions seemed off, somehow unnatural. The theater door slid open on its own, revealing a sliver of pink light. We stepped into the cool lobby. Red and white garlands cast shimmering reflections across the polished floor, while quiet music seeped from hidden speakers. At the ticket counter, two people in ordinary clothes were purchasing tickets, newcomers who must have followed the same advertisement. A white rabbit gesticulated wildly to a queue of 5 people at the concession stand, while behind the counter, 2 red rabbits silently dispensed soda and heaped popcorn into large red boxes. So at least 7 others saw the ad. Did they receive altar cards too? Outside, the festival was in full swing. Children danced in some competition. Musicians poured their souls into their instruments. The cacophony of chatter and music swirled around us.
I suggest we have a couple of beers at Murphy's Irish Pub.
Dan jerked his head toward the bar. I nodded and we headed toward the bar, leaving the music and laughter behind us. Inside, Dan and I told Michael about how we'd gotten our cards and the unusual properties we'd discovered. To our surprise, Michael took this information with remarkable coolness. He didn't deny the strangeness of the situation, But our stories provoked neither panic nor excitement in him, just a calm analytical acceptance of the facts. Now we face 3 questions. 1. What capabilities did Michael's card hold? 2. Who were the other card holders? 3. Where would this strange chain of events ultimately lead? We agreed to stay in constant contact and carefully document any unusual incidents in the city.